You're listening to Sports Talk with Travis the Bus, Dillon Hutton, and Cory Johnston, live from Political Dogs in the Glade Spring Town Square.
Come with me now.
All right, welcome to Sports Talk with Travis, Dillon, and Cory. We're here live at Political Dog in Town Square, Glade Spring, Virginia. It's Sports Talk brought to you by Political Dog and Lowe's Home Improvement Warehouse. Got a lot to get to tonight. We're going to recap this past Friday night around the Hoagie District. Going to talk a little bit about college football later on in the show. So with all that being said, let's open up by recapping this past Friday night, the game that we were at on Hogo Game Day.
A great game at Patrick Henry High School. The Rural Retreat Indians came down to Patrick Henry High School to take on Mark Palmer. And the Rebels, pretty good game down there. The Rebels snapped a 22-game Hoga-Higgy streak that started. Their last Hoga-Higgy win was in 2009. They got their first win since 2009, so a huge win for the Rebels on Friday night.
I think we were all pretty surprised with how Patrick Henry passed the ball. I think we all came in with our key players and really thought it was going to be a run game, and it turned in to be a pretty balanced attack from Patrick Henry. They had 169 yards rushing, 156 yards passing. Very efficient in that passing game, too.
Yeah, I feel like the passing game was the difference in that football game.
Yeah, it made all the difference in the world, but the Patrick Henry defense really shut down those two powerful running backs from Rural Retreat, Nolan Ryan, Stone Mullins. Those guys weren't able to do a whole lot, so credit Patrick Henry coming in with a good defensive game plan. It was a well-executed game by the Rebels. They led 24-14 at halftime. Then they were able to stretch the lead to 2 scores by kicking that 27-yard field goal to make that a 10-point lead at the half. Rural Retreat did cut the lead down to 2 points, though, at the end of the third quarter. Looked like they were going to mount a little bit of a comeback. Rebels were up 31-29 at the start of the fourth, but PH went on to score 20 unanswered points to clinch that first Hogo win since 2009.
Yeah, they finished that game strong.
You talked about the Stone Mullins-Nolan Ryan combo. They came in 9 yards per carry, almost 1,400 yards between the two of them. They left Patrick Henry 25 carries, 102 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 fumble. Stone Mullins did have the 53-yard touchdown reception, but with that 25 carries on 102 yards, they more than cut the yards per carry in half for those guys.
Yeah, they did a great job in that football game, and the Rebels could be a force to be reckoned with moving on into the season.
Yeah, that was a well-executed game beginning to end. They managed the game really well, managed the clock really well. Only one miscue that I thought all night long, and that was the second attempted onside kick. They had stretched the lead to 2 scores. Then they went and tried an onside kick again. Man, when momentum is in your favor, kick the ball deep and make Rural Retreat drive the length of the field. They hadn't done it but the one time all night, so make them do it again.
They got lucky, too. 2 plays later, Rural Retreat fumbled. But other than that, I think another miscue was Zach Wright fumbling the ball right there in the first half. Everybody forgot about that one, but the Rebels were driving on that second drive of the game for them offensively. Then they fumbled right about the 50-yard line.
You talk about that pass play, too. In the stat line, it looks like a 28-yard reception, but I think we all had our doubts whether Kessner caught that ball. And that was a big momentum shift. That was just after a turnover. Zach Wright had run the ball twice. They were moving into Rural Retreat territory, and then the 28-yard pass play gets them down to the 6-yard line. And like you said, Travis, you can't really overturn that call after it's already been called a catch.
Yeah, unfortunately, we've gotten so used to the replay ability sitting at home watching it on television. All the major conferences in college football now, they've got the review procedure. And you're right, it looked like he didn't carry that ball all the way through the catch, but it was ruled a catch. The officials did discuss it and talk about flipping it around, but they had to stay with the call that they made. The Rural Retreat coaches obviously were very upset, but nothing they could do about it at that point.
Yep, that was a questionable call, but ended up being a game, a clincher there for the Rebels as they scored on the next play out. Dakota Humphrey ran it in from 2 yards out. A big play for the Rebels as they went on to win that game 51-29. So a big win for Patrick Henry. Up next, we're going to talk a little bit more about the Hoga-Higgy. Then we'll do our college news and picks for next week. We'll be right back after the commercial break. Sports Talk with Travis DeBusk and Dillon Hutton is brought to you by none other than Political Dogs, the hot dog leader of the free world. Dine in or take out of Political Dogs on 215 Town Square Street in Glade Spring, Virginia. The number is 276-429-1165. They're open Monday through Saturday, 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. And check out their website, politicaldogs.com. They're also the site for our show on Tuesdays at 6 o'clock. Make sure you stop by and watch and eat at Political Dogs. You're listening to Sports Talk with Travis DeBusk and Dillon Hutton. They'll be talking Hogo sports and college sports here on the Hoga-Higgy Network. They would like to thank their sponsors, starting off with Appalachian Plastics, Big M Farm Service, Serber & Son, Carter's Pharmacy, Blade Pharmacy, Abingdon Equipment, Lowe's, never stop improving. And last but not least, Political Dogs. If you have any Hoga-Higgy related questions or any college football related questions in general, tweet us at Hogo Game Day. And we'll answer the questions right here or discuss the comments right here live on the show.
Come with me now.
All right, welcome back to Sports Talk with Travis DeBusk, Dillon Hutton, and Cory Johnston. Up next, we're going to talk about Hogo Talk. Results from last week in the Hoga-Higgy. We just talked about PH and Rural Retreat. Patrick Henry won that game 51-29 to notch their first win in the district since 2009. And also, it's been a long time since PH has been 1-0 in the Hoga-Higgy. So 51-29, the Rebels defeated the Indians. Marion played Tazewell last week. Very impressive victory, 40-12 over the Bulldogs, handing the Bulldogs their second loss in a row now as they started off 4-0. So big win there from the Marion Scarlet Hurricanes. Another game from last week, Virginia High, Chilhowie. Virginia High defeated Chilhowie 41-27 over in Warrior Country, and Northwood defeated Montcalm 47-12. So those were scores from around the district last week.
I think Chilhowie, that's a team that we can't decide how good they are. We've debated this last week, and I know we talked about it in the booth a little bit Friday night too. Chilhowie in some games, they looked pretty impressive. That win against Burton looked really big at the beginning of the season, but Burton since then has had their struggles. Tazewell, we thought they played, or Chilhowie, they played Tazewell remarkably close and almost pulled off the upset there, but since then Tazewell's dropped their last two games to two Hogo teams, losing to George Wythe and then also losing to Marion last week. So I think Chilhowie's still the real big question mark on the Hoga-Higgy district schedule. Are they a very good team right now?
You know, they came back in that game. We were giving updates on our broadcast Friday night, and it really looked like Virginia High was going to thump them there early and stormed all the way back to within 7 with 2 minutes to go, and then Virginia High put it away. But I'm with you. I'm not really sure about this Chilhowie team. I feel like if they could get that passing attack together, they may have more of a balanced game like what Patrick Henry had.
Yeah, Chilhowie coming to that game 1-4. Virginia High did also. I had Chilhowie picked to win it, but Chilhowie I pick Chilhowie every week. When am I going to learn my lesson?
This week.
I might still take Chilhowie. But Virginia High come out of that, they improved to 2-4, and Chilhowie drops to 1-5, and they will have a battle with Holston coming up here in a couple weeks for the basement.
Yeah, that's weird to hear Chilhowie in the basement, but that's just the way it's.
Well, if you think about it, that's two teams that played for the Higgy Championship last year.
That's right.
The last game of the season was between Holston and Chilhowie, and now they're at the very bottom.
Yeah, that's a big drop-off for two teams that were at the top last year. Now it's time to go ahead and name off the Hoga-Higgy standings. Starting at number 1, the Northwood Panthers are 6-0 and 2-0 in the Hoga-Higgy. Marion is 5-1, 4-1. They're in second place. Third place, Patrick Henry, 3-2, 1-0 in the district. And then we get down here to the winless teams from the Hoga-Higgy. Rural Retreat's 3-3, 0-2 in the district. George Wist 2-3, 0-1 in the district. Got a big opportunity this week. Chilhowie's 1-5, 0-2 in the district, and Holston's 0-5, 0-1 in the district. So all of those teams have big games coming up this weekend or this Friday. Marion, of course, has a bye. Everybody else is in Hogo action.
Well, as it stands like now, there's only 2 teams in the district that control their own destiny. That's the first place Northwood Panthers and the team sitting there at third in the Patrick Henry Rowdy Rebels.
Yep, those are teams that have the bulk of their schedule still left.
With that Chilhowie-Holston turnaround, last year both teams finished 7-3 on their regular season, and now this year both teams are a combined 1-10. So talk about a turnaround.
That's huge.
Well, you can understand it, I guess, a little bit in schools around here, especially like in Holston's case. You're a very small school. You lost your head coach. He went on, took another, an administrative job, so he left. But who's to say they would be any better if he were still there? You just got so much turnover and so few kids to choose from. A school like Holston, Patrick Henry's just now coming out of it. Look at the rough stretch they've had the last couple of years. They got the same problem. Not a whole lot of kids to choose from.
Yeah, that's really an issue at some of these smaller schools. Let's go ahead and talk about some questions that might have been answered or some things that happened last week. I'll ask Travis one question, then I'll ask Cory a question. Travis, we'll start with you. Most impressive victory from last week?
I'm gonna go with Patrick Henry. I thought that win was really impressive, especially the way they did it with that offensive balance. I thought that game, I picked Patrick Henry to win it, but I thought it really could have been a toss-up. I wouldn't have been surprised if Roll Retreat would have come out of there with the win. But the way Patrick Henry just shut down that Roll Retreat running game, and then the way Patrick Henry was able to move the ball themselves on offense, I think that's the most impressive victory this week is PH over Roll Retreat.
Cory, what was your biggest surprise from last week?
I kind of got to go with Travis, but to take that just a little bit further, I was surprised that Patrick Henry threw the ball so effectively. I think that was the real difference in the game was the passing game, and I don't think any of us expected to see that, especially with the field conditions, and we really thought it was going to rain, and I think the rain would have put the ball on the ground a lot more too. But Patrick Henry was very effective with the passing game. I'd have to go with Travis on that one.
Speaking of the rain, do you realize that is the 6th game we've done this year, and our weatherman has missed the forecast in all 6?
I know. Wonder who our weatherman is.
I don't know. We need to get rid of him.
Yeah, he's not doing a very good job. All right, and another thing, last week, player of the game from Friday night, we talked to a couple fans after it, and it'd be easy to say Dakota Humphrey, it'd be easy to say Zach Wright, but I think we've got to turn to somebody who made a huge difference offensively and defensively, mostly defensively.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we've gone with Patrick Henry's inside linebacker and fullback, Grant Ramey. He had 1 interception, 1 fumble recovery. He led the team in tackles on the night and also scored a touchdown from that fullback position. So usually an unsung hero right there, especially on the defensive side of the ball, but that's the guy we're going to make our Friday night player of the week.
And he's pretty vital in that heavy set that Patrick Henry runs. If you watch that set, they run that
he's
spread.
He's a fullback too, yeah. He ran a touchdown.
Yeah, and he's very effective in that position.
He's a pretty good player. He transferred from Abingdon a year ago, so he is pretty good there for the Rebels. Let's go talk about, Travis, you hit on this a little bit earlier about the questionable play call of the game. PH was up 21-14, decided to go ahead and try to kick another onside kick with 4 minutes to go until the half. What did you think about that?
Yeah, Patrick Henry they were down 14-7, and they come out, kicked that on, they just scored, kicked the onside kick, got the ball back, scored again, then come back and kicked another onside kick. And I thought that was, a bad move. They had gone up a score on Royal Retreat. Momentum was in their favor, and it about come back to bite them. They kicked it. The ball went out of bounds. Of course, that's a procedure penalty. It set Royal Retreat up on the Patrick Henry side of the 50-yard line.
Yeah,
luckily for them, Royal Retreat would go on to fumble the ball just a couple plays later, but they were moving, and that could have been a disastrous move, I thought. Bad tactical move by the coaching staff, I thought, for Patrick Henry.
You're right. They got a little greedy, and I think since it worked the first time, they tried it again, and it really could have come back to bite them. But my questionable play is the pass play, and it's questionable for the referees. And it's got to be, I know it's got to be one of the hardest jobs in the world to be a referee in high school football. Well, maybe besides our weatherman. But as far as that goes, I still think they got the call wrong. It doesn't matter now. It goes down as a 28-yard pass play. But that was a big momentum swing. I mean, that could have made a huge difference in that game, especially it being a 2-point game at the time. Royal Retreat had closed the gap to 2 points and really had all the momentum. And that could have really went either way at that point. But either way, it showed as a big play. A little questionable on the call, and I know it's tough on a 3-man officiating crew to get a call like that. But either way, it is what it is. It's a 28-yard pass play.
You're right. A 3-man crew, it's hard to cover that much field space and getting yourself in position to find, especially on those receivers. The officials got to really be backpedaling to get himself in position to see what happened. Kudos to the officials for at least getting together and talking about it, though. I thought they could have, just let it slide, but they did. They did discuss it and come up with the idea that they couldn't overturn it.
But you're right. No replay. It would have been about impossible to overturn that call. And with the momentum shift came the penalty, the mental mistake on the coaching staff. I mean, I would have been angry too, but you got to keep your composure there. I mean, the procedure penalty there doesn't necessarily lose a lot of yards because they're so close to the goal line. But either way, the next play scored.
Yeah, it's a couple times this week we've seen some coaches, or this season we've seen some coaches get upset. You remember the Chilhowie game?
Absolutely.
Over the pass interference call, the coaches got pretty irate with that. But, hey, it's high emotions for them just like it is for the players.
Oh, yeah, and that just happens. Things in the game, there's plays that hinge on, right before the half, a lot of things can happen, especially that one. It could have been a huge turn in the game if they call that incomplete. We could be looking at a different game. It was a 2-point game then.
And we looked at the film. It was 2nd and 8. So you're talking about a 3rd and 8. Although Patrick Henry was good on 3rd down conversions all night, it still could have went either way. I mean, you're looking at midfield there, just a little bit further than midfield or closer than midfield. If they don't get that, you don't get the 3rd down, you're in go-for-it territory. You could punt. But, I mean, that really could have changed the game either way.
Yeah, and that was huge because Royal Retreat up to that point had gotten back into the football game, got it back to 2 points. It was a 17-point game. They scored 15 points in a minute and a half. That's pretty impressive. Royal Retreat had a good comeback going, just couldn't get anything going there in the fourth quarter. And PH almost lost that game, like you were hitting on in the third quarter. That could have been a huge turnaround there for Royal Retreat, but they weren't able to scrape their way back into it. Let's go ahead and talk about the Hogo Power Rankings. Go ahead, Cory.
Are you sure you want to do this?
You can do the power rankings.
Okay, well, I've got my power rankings. I've got Northwood at 1, Marion 2.
Well, that's good. You got Northwood.
George Wythe at 3, Patrick Henry at 4, Royal Retreat 5, Chilhowie at 6, and Holston at 7.
Yeah, I got Northwood first. I believe it is a debate between who's the best right now, who's the hottest team. Is it them or Marion? It is a little bit of a debate, but Northwood did beat Marion, so we're going to go with that for now. We're going to have Northwood first, Marion second. I'm going to put Patrick Henry third.
Ooh,
I'm going to change that up a little bit.
I could see that.
I'm going to put George Wythe 4th, Roll Retreat 5th, Chilhowie 6th, Holston 7th.
That's pretty good.
That's pretty good.
I'll do
Your
mine.
picks now, Dillon.
Okay, number 1, I have Marion. I think Marion right now is playing pretty good football. They've played some pretty good teams here. They're beating them well. They beat
Marion on offense is just clicking right now.
Yeah.
I mean, they're scoring points and they're scoring fast. They've proved that the last several weeks. They got that one blemish to Northwood, and they didn't look like themselves that night. Whether they had everybody, didn't have everybody, whatever.
That's not
They
the
just couldn't
issue.
get
I
seen.
was trying to prove on that.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm going by how the teams are playing right now. Those 6 guys are
right
back.
now they're scoring a lot of points and they're scoring quick.
But I think you also got to look at maybe Tazewell's not the team we thought they were. Okay, Marion's win versus Tazewell looks impressive, but is Tazewell the team we thought we were? Barely squeaking out a win against Chilhowie. You know, Chilhowie's not looking like a very good team right now. So maybe that win that Marion has is not that impressive Friday night. But that's all opinion too.
The difference between Marion and Northwood is, if there's any, we could just put them both tied for the top and just stop it and just do it that way. But I've got Marion, second place Northwood, with Blake Olinger being the way he is. If Olinger's not playing this Friday, I'm not picking Northwood. I'll go ahead and tell you right now.
It would be tough to pick Northwood without Blake Olinger.
And I know that Doan's a good athlete, but not compared to some of them guys for George Wythe. I've got George Wythe 3rd in the power ranking. They're hitting on all cylinders, too, now. Patrick Henry 4th, Rural Retreat 5th, Chilhowie 6th, and Holston 7th. Chilhowie just isn't finishing enough drives. They're not playing good enough in big games right now to get a vote from me.
Now that you've touched on it, maybe that's something we should bring up. If Olinger does not play Friday night, and we've talked about this, we don't know. We've heard 2 different tales, and it's hard to get, an injury update on a kid. We don't know how he's recovering, whatever. If he doesn't play Friday night, this is a totally different Northwood team. We're not saying it all just hinges on him. I mean, you still got that fantastic secondary that they've got, and got these other guys they've still got athletes. But they lean on him pretty heavy. The whole dynamic of their offense changes.
Yeah, George Wythe Northwood's going to be the best game of the week. We've got some great games on tap here with district teams, all district games. Marion's got a bye. You got Patrick Henry at Holston in Damascus. George Wythe at Northwood and Saltville. It's going to be a fun game. Chilhowie at Rural Retreat. That's pretty much a toss-up to see which running game can hold out and see if Chilhowie can actually finish drives and see if Rural Retreat can get any running game going out of that fear, because PH had it stopped last week. And then, of course, Marion's got the bye. There's a lot of good games this week. Each game has a lot to prove. PH has got to break that streak against Holston if they want any chance of anything this year, in my opinion.
I think with what you're saying on Blake Olinger, we did see a small bit without Olinger in the Northwood-Chilhowie game. And Northwood theoretically beat Chilhowie without Olinger there in the 4th quarter. But Chilhowie is no George Wythe. That's the difference.
Yeah, I think we're going to be in for a good game, but it will be a fun Friday night in Hogahegie football.
Given all of Chilhowie's struggles so far, and even though they're sitting there at 1-5 and 0-2 in the district, right now they're still in playoff position. They've still got a lot of things to play for. If they can pick up a couple more wins between now and the end of the year and improve that playoff standing a little bit, nobody's season in the Hogo is over yet. Everybody's still got plenty to play for as we go into the second half. So that's an exciting thing for all these guys.
I think what we touched on last week
for
on
all
the show,
extensive purposes,
Chilhowie still has potential. I mean, we saw that in the Northwood game. If they could get that passing game down like Patrick Henry did against Rural Retreat, I think Chilhowie can beat Rural Retreat this week.
But I think for all extensive purposes, we can go ahead and count Rural Retreat out. They can mess up a few teams' seasons, but as far as playoff-wise, we're halfway through the season, and they haven't showed any spark of defense yet. Yeah, Holston. Who knows? But, a lot can change in a few weeks, 5 weeks. Let's go ahead and talk about Hogo teams that will be making the playoff. Everybody's in at this point except for Holston. In the 1A West, you've got Northwood as a 2 seed. Patrick Henry jumped up from 14th, and now they are the 9 seed after defeating Rural Retreat. 13th seed George Wythe, 14th seed Rural Retreat, and barely making a cut in the top 16. Chilhowie's in this week.
So Patrick Henry's just a couple seeds from a home playoff game, guys.
Yeah, if they get a few more wins, they can be eyeing a home playoff spot, which would be big.
That would be big. They obviously play good at home.
Emory could use a good playoff game in early rounds of the Virginia High School League playoffs. Yeah, as it stands right now, Northwood's going to host. Patrick Henry picks up a couple more spots. They're going to host.
That would be something for PH.
Did any of our Hogo teams host a game last year, or were all of them on the road?
I think they were all on the road.
I think everybody was away, and they all lost in the first round. So.
Yep, and when we jump up to 2A West, Marion is making it. They're in 5th place, so they're well within it as long as the wheels don't fall off. If the playoffs started today, the Hogo matchups will be J.I. Burton at Northwood, Patrick Henry at Auburn, George Wythe at Fort Chiswell. We've already seen that game. Rural Retreat at Hayside, Chilhowie at Honaker, and Lebanon at Marion. So right now we've got 2 teams hosting in the playoffs at this point. Of course, it's going to change a lot, but there are some good matchups in that playoff right now. But with that, I guess that covers our Hogo talk. We'll go ahead and get set here to get ready and talk about college football. It's always a fun part of the show. Just a reminder, games this week in the Hoga-Higgy. Patrick Henry at Holston, George Wythe at Northwood, Chilhowie at Rural Retreat, and, of course, Marion has a bye. And we'll be at Patrick Henry Holston for the pregame show, for our live video pregame show. Holston, I think it's homecoming.
It is.
It's homecoming for Holston, so we'll be there for that one, the big rivalry game, the formerly known as Shriner Bowl. That was a fun game back not too long ago after that 08 upset, but we'll be there for that one. Then we're going to take off to Saltville, Virginia for the George Wythe Northwood game. It's the game of the week, so we'll be there for that one. Me and Travis will drive up after the show. We got a couple of guys going and setting up early, so we'll be in Saltville for the live game broadcast.
If you think Holston doesn't have anything to play for, just go over there and ask those kids how they feel about Patrick Henry coming to town Friday night.
Yeah, they've got some confidence this week. They're coming off a bye, too, so they've had time to prepare for this. But with that, we're going to go to a quick commercial break. We'll be right back. College football talk up next.
Come with me now.
Sports Talk with Travis DeBusk and Dillon Hutton is brought to you by none other than Political Dogs, the hot dog leader of the free world. Dine in or take out of Political Dogs on 215 Town Square Street in Glade Spring, Virginia. The number is 276-429-1165. They're open Monday through Saturday, 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. And check out their website, politicaldogs.com. They're also the site for our show on Tuesdays at 6 o'clock. Make sure you stop by and watch and eat at Political Dogs. You're listening to Sports Talk with Travis DeBusk and Dillon Hutton. They'll be talking Hogo sports and college sports here on the Hoga-Higgy Network. They would like to thank their sponsors, starting off with Appalachian Plastics, Big M Farm Service, Serber & Son, Carter's Pharmacy, Glade Pharmacy, Abingdon Equipment, Lowe's, never stop improving. And last but not least, Political Dogs. Hello, this is Dillon Hutton and Cory Johnston from the Hoga-Higgy Radio Network. And I'm here to talk about why the SEC is the premier conference in college football.
Whoa. Hold on a second. How about we save this conversation for Sports Talk? Tuesday night, 6 p.m. at Political Dogs in Glade Spring, Virginia.
Okay, I'd like to say a couple of things about it. We'll wait. We'll save it for next week. Tuesday night, stop by and see us at Political Dogs in the Glade Town Square. Sports Talk with Travis DeBusk, Dillon Hutton, and I'm Cory Johnson. We'll see you Tuesday. If you have any Hoga-Higgy related questions or any college football related questions in general, tweet us at Hogo Game Day. And we'll answer the questions right here or discuss the comments right here live on the show.
Welcome back to Sports Talk with Travis, Dillon, and Cory. We're here at the Political Dog in Town Square, Glade Spring. If you haven't been by here, come by and visit this fine establishment. They got nice, delicious hot dogs, freedom of information fries, fried pickles, hot dogs, hamburgers. Be sure you make a visit to Political Dog downtown Glade Spring. We want to thank them for hosting us again this Tuesday night. They're going to do for the Tuesday nights the remainder of football season. So we're glad that they've invited us. We also have our Political Dog appetizer of the week. It's the Career Politician. They've got that for $4.99. That's a basket of our special recipe, freedom of information fries covered with chili, cheese, and fried jalapenos.
Sounds pretty good.
That's pretty good.
But with that, let's go ahead and start college football talk. I guess some headlines we need to cover. Michigan lost again. This time it was to Rutgers. Will Michigan stick with Brady Hoke for all of 2014?
I've got a name that I didn't throw out last week for that Michigan job, and I think it might surprise probably both of you and maybe everybody. But East Carolina's coach, Ruffin McNeil, I think that would be I don't think Michigan's going to go out and get the big name, but Ruffin McNeil, what he's done with an East Carolina school, East Carolina's ranked right now. I think that would be a name we've got to watch for that Michigan job.
And they're not offensively challenged, that's for sure.
Yeah, and it's not like he's just having one of these super surprise seasons for the East Carolina Pirates. He's built this thing.
Right.
We've seen it coming.
It's kind of like David Cutcliffe, what he's done with Duke.
And
a lot from that.
Before East Carolina, he was at Texas.
Right.
So I'm telling you, Ruffin McNeil, keep him on your radar. I think he'll be somewhere next year.
I think when Michigan seen the addition to the Big Ten in Maryland and Rutgers, they never imagined themselves losing in that first season to the Rutgers Scarlet Knights.
Yeah, that surprised me, but at the same time it really didn't. Let's talk about another thing locally. Tennessee got into the fourth quarter with a decent Florida team. You know, they had them beat. They was up 9-0, really wasn't able to score. When will Tennessee get into the fourth quarter with the team and actually finish? They've let volunteer fans down for 2 weeks straight in Athens. Last week losing to 3 to the Dogs, and then of course letting down, giving up 10 points in the fourth quarter to a Florida team who they had stopped and stymied them on offense all day.
They're probably not going to get back into this thing till that offensive line grows up. They're so young. They gave up 6 sacks on Saturday, and that's been the problem about every week for them so far offensively. But those guys are young. And, you know, if they didn't have the leadership with Worley there at quarterback, these beatdowns might be a whole lot worse than what they've been. You want Tennessee to pick up a big win, though, so these kids can feel like they can play and hang with the upper echelon teams in the SEC. They've been close. I still think that trip out to Oklahoma was pretty impressive to hang in that game as well as they did. But they're still at least 1 year, if not 2, away from being able to compete in the Southeastern Conference.
I've been waiting on this segment since Saturday, this Tennessee segment. My opinion on Tennessee is that you've got to learn to finish. Okay, we've watched them against Oklahoma, we've watched them against Georgia, and now against Florida. And we're talking about 3 totally different teams that they've played. You know, we've got 2 top 10 teams. Florida's offense is ranked 114th in the nation. You cause 3 turnovers and you can't get the job done. But all I've heard all weekend is that 1 second on the play clock where Florida kicked the field goal. Stop making excuses and start making the changes that need to happen there to get a win. You've got to learn to finish.
Did I see this correctly? That was the fewest amount of points scored by an SEC team in a victory in 400 and some odd games.
I believe it. And the thing about it is Tennessee led 9-0 going into the fourth quarter. I mean, I don't know how in the world you get 3 turnovers, 3 Florida turnovers. One drive starts on the Florida 13-yard line, and all you get out of is 3 points. You've got to capitalize on those opportunities if you're Tennessee, or you're never going to win those games. And it's not like Tennessee's schedule gets any easier. You know, we talked about Tennessee maybe making a bowl game. They've still got Missouri left. Maybe the locations are
Alabama.
They have Ole Miss left. It's not going to get any easier. And the way Kentucky played this weekend, heck, they might lose that one too. And you've got South Carolina left on the schedule, which maybe isn't as good as what we thought they were. But are they better than the Tennessee team that's obviously not as good as what we thought they would be?
You never know what you're going to get with South Carolina. I mean, that team is hot, cold, up, down. You know, at one point in that early on, Kentucky was beating the britches off of South Carolina. Then all of a sudden, South Carolina comes back and they start laying the whipping on the Wildcats. Next thing you know, Kentucky's rolling. It was like watching an NBA game. Everybody was on a run.
Yeah, South Carolina blew that game like they've blown 2 straight games just the same way Tennessee has. I didn't understand why Spurrier came out. He had a chance to kill the clock, run the ball a few times. You got Mike Davis back there behind Dillon Thompson, and he decided to throw the ball for 3 straight downs, incomplete, and didn't let the clock stop. They could have really, and that stopped the clock, I mean. South Carolina could have taken a big chunk out of that play, the game clock, but they didn't. Steve Spurrier, I think that shows the confidence that he doesn't have in his defense at this point. That's where it all starts with South Carolina. The last 3 years, these 11-win seasons, they've had good defenses, but now that offense isn't coming through. You can see Spurrier starting to go back to his old Florida ways.
I think from the press conference a couple weeks ago, I don't think Spurrier's confident in his whole team. I think he's got doubts across the board.
Yeah, he does have some issues.
Well, you never know exactly how he likes to play those mind games, too, with his kids and get them psyched up. But, yeah, South Carolina's just not a very good team right now. And back to Tennessee, they're just not a very good team either. That Florida team that they lost to, Florida come in with all kinds of questions. Florida's got more questions now. Quarterback getting suspended when he got back to on campus Sunday. So Florida is in more trouble.
We talked about Tennessee's young offensive line. They've got a senior quarterback. So after Worley graduates, who you got? I mean, you're going to have a young quarterback leading the team. So now you almost reset again next year.
You either got Peterman or Dobbs.
Hey, I seen the commercial, brick by brick.
He's got a few loose bricks right now in that program.
That's true.
But that wasn't very good. That was mean, wasn't it? 3 out of the top 6 teams in the country went down on Saturday. Number 2, Oregon went down on Thursday night to Arizona. Number 3, Alabama went into Oxford. Didn't come out the same way. They came out with a loss. And Texas A&M, of course, went to Starkville. And then nothing went right for them in that game. Mississippi State brought the cowbells out and won that game pretty handily.
Good week to be a football fan in Mississippi, wasn't it?
That's right. Hey, not to take anything away from your Ole Miss Rebels, that was a big win. Exciting time down there. But let's think about this as far as Alabama goes. This is the 3rd game in the row they've lost against a ranked opponent.
Yeah, and we've got a sound clip. We'll get Andy to pull it up here in a second. But before that, let's go ahead and go over these upsets real quick before we hit on the Alabama topic. Unranked Arizona knocked off Oregon 31-24. Rich Rod had that team ready. They ran all over Oregon for the bigger part of that game.
Unranked no more.
Yeah, unranked no more. They're in the top 10. That's a big jump. You can tell it was an upset Saturday when a team went from being unranked to beating a number 2 team all the way up into the top 10.
We had one heck of a shakeup in the top 25 this week. A lot of upsets.
Yeah, Arizona State upset USC on a Hail Mary, number 16 USC. Unranked Northwestern defeated number 17 Wisconsin 20-14. That's sort of an upset, especially as bad as Northwestern's been this year. Mississippi State whooped up on number 6 Texas A&M in Starkville, 48-31. TCU holds off number 4 Oklahoma in Fort Worth for that 37-33 win. That was a surprising win. I talked about that with you all, maybe possibly been an upset. Y'all were just shaking it off like, no way. TCU's got a defense. This week they play Baylor. That'll be a fun football game. Unranked Utah beat UCLA, number 8 UCLA, 30-28 in Los Angeles. So that was a pretty surprising game.
And I don't know if any of you guys watched that game, but Utah pretty much controlled it from the opening kick.
Game. And, that's not a real big surprise to me. I've been saying I've not been sold on UCLA all year.
Yeah, they haven't played good.
They struggled with Virginia. They struggled with Memphis. I mean, they haven't really had a convincing win this year, so I'm not sold on UCLA to begin with. But Utah getting the win over Miami, I would have to say I'm a little surprised there. But UCLA is not a top 10 program, I don't think. I don't think they're a top 10 team right now.
Yeah, then the last game, of course, number 11 Ole Miss upset number 3 Alabama in Oxford, 23-17. That was a fun game to watch. Ole Miss was down 14-3 at the half. A critical fumble right there at the half, and Alabama recovered and ran it in the end zone. There was a face mask on the play. It wasn't called. So I was really whining at halftime about that, but then they came back out in the second half and did what good teams do. Hugh Freeze said it at the half. You got to look past that and just keep playing. And what a way for them to come back. Their defense was really good. So Ole Miss with that big upset win.
Yeah, very entertaining ball game to watch.
Yeah, that was a huge win. So with that, let's go ahead and talk about the shakeup in the top 25.
Gosh, we had a lot of movement with all the upsets. Right now, looking at the top 25, top 10 read as Florida State number 1. Auburn jumps to number 2. Mississippi State and Ole Miss are tied at number 3. Both of those teams jump Baylor and Notre Dame at 5 and 6. 7, Alabama. That's surprising they only fell to 7th. I thought they would fall out of the top 10. Michigan State at 8. TCU at 9 and Arizona at 10. Just outside the top 10, Oklahoma's 11th, Oregon is 12th, Georgia 13th, Texas A&M 14th, Ohio State 15th. So that's the top 15 right there.
Okay, so that's the top 15, a big shake-up there. You got that sound bit up, Andy? What? You got that sound bit? We've got something we're going to play about the Alabama-Ole Miss game. Colin Coward of ESPN talked about the Alabama dynasty coming to an end. Here is a caller from the Paul Feinbaum show calling in to talk about her displeasure. Here is Phyllis from like somewhere crazy in Alabama. Well, hold on.
I was thinking of something else.
Phyllis.
These Alabama fans really take it serious.
Yeah, Alabama, they're funny on the Paul Feinbaum
that's their
show.
life.
You got it, Andy?
It's not on here.
It should be.
Well, going back to the SEC championship game last year at the loss.
Go ahead. Keep talking.
I mean, they lost to Auburn. I'm sorry, prior to the SEC title game last year, they got that loss to Auburn. Then they lost to Oklahoma. Then, of course, they lost to Ole Miss. So the last 3 times they've taken the field against ranked opponents, they've lost.
And I think Blake Sims will be a great quarterback, but he's not there yet. And I don't think the whole team's there yet.
All right, here is Phyllis from Alabama.
Call of the day.
Hey, Cal Turd, you are just, I don't even have a name for you anymore, except Cal Turd. How dare you say that about Alabama? They lose a game, and they lost it to a good team. The team beat Alabama. But how can you say, after the dynasty took all these years, all these decades, one game is going to mean that Saban's dynasty is over? You're out of your freaking mind, cow turd. You need to go back to whatever the hell you was doing before you got on the radio. And how dare you call me out? You call me out, you're going to get me back. You hear me, you punk? How dare you? I don't understand the way you act towards It's Bama. That's what it is. It's Bama. You don't hate any team in this nation except for Bama. And you know why? Because they're better than what you've got. Nick Saban is a better man than you are. You could never coach because you don't have a bit of coaching in your body. You have nothing but to sit there and insult and down and just carry on about everybody that's doing something different than you. You're jealous. That's the bottom line. You're jealous. And Bama's coming back. Bama has not lost. The dynasty is not over. Do you hear me, Cowherd? Bama's dynasty has just begun. Kiss my butt. Roll Tide.
All right, roll Tide.
That is an angry woman.
I tell you what, I've been under fire this week, but I'm glad I didn't have to deal with that.
And you thought those Northwood fans were fired up.
I know. Shoot.
Gosh, I'd hate to be Cowherd right now.
He says stuff out of the way about every week, though.
Yeah.
He also said that Gus Malzahn owned Nick Saban from now on. So.
And I also remember him being a big Tebow fan. He said Tebow would be a great quarterback in the NFL. Now
He's been
Tebow's
wrong,
calling games for the SEC network, so.
Now, I'd like to be in that spot, though, so if I had that opportunity. Travis, is the Alabama dynasty over?
Not if ESPN can help it. I mean, I think they're going to continue to talk Alabama up. They just look at the coaches poll this week and the AP top 25. How can you have that many SEC teams up in there? I mean, what are we basing them against? Only teams they're playing are each other. But back to the question: is the Alabama dynasty dead? Maybe. They're not as good as they've been the last couple of years. Let's think back to how their season went. Hey, they struggled to beat Virginia Tech to kick off the 2013 season.
That's true.
And we see how bad that season turned out for the Hokies.
I think in college football, when you talk about dynasties, you talk about one set of students. And I think when A.J. McCarron graduated, A.J. McCarron wasn't the greatest quarterback to ever play at Alabama, but he was a good game manager and he got the job done. And I think when he graduated, maybe that part of the dynasty is over. But as long as Alabama has a recruiting class every year like they do in the top 5, the possibilities are there. Okay, Saban just didn't walk into a great program. Okay, if you remember, Alabama was a down program when Saban got there. So to say that the dynasty, maybe this part of the dynasty is over, but the possibilities for it to be back
They've
are
still
there.
got talent.
Oh, yeah,
Derrick
they'll always
Henry,
have
T.J.
talent.
Yeldon at running back.
They'll always have talent. And maybe they don't come back this year, and maybe they're not the team we thought they were going to be this year. And we talked about Blake Sims at the break. Maybe he's not the Heisman quarterback right now, but he could be. The potential's there. And who else would you rather have on your side to develop a team than Nick Saban? I don't think Nick Saban's dynasty is over. But the first part, with A.J. McCarron, Eddie Lacy, some of those guys that have graduated and went on to bigger and better things, maybe that part's over. But as far as Alabama will always be a powerhouse.
Yeah, teams, this SEC this year, especially the West, they've just really, it feels like the cannibalization of the SEC's really taken part because, you know, Ole Miss upset Alabama. Alabama's usually the gold standard in college football, not just the SEC. They have been for a few years now. I mean, y'all, I know you don't like the SEC too much, but we can all pretty much agree that Bama has been the gold standard as far as the way things have been running through college football the past few years.
We're going to see a shakeup in the West this week. The top 4 in the West all play each other. Auburn goes to Mississippi State. Ole Miss goes to Texas A&M. That's the top 4 in the West standings right now. So 2 of those teams are going to have either 2 losses or 1 loss in the SEC. So we're not going to see this forever. We're not going to see this.
Well, they're all going to have to play. Yeah.
Auburn's got the toughest remaining schedule anybody. They've got number 2 Mississippi State, South Carolina, number 3 Ole Miss, number 14 Texas A&M, number 13 Georgia, and number 7 Alabama. 6 out of their remaining 7 games, the only other game they play is Samford. So
Yeah.
that's a tough schedule to end your year. If Auburn can end the year undefeated, I'll be impressed.
Yeah, Auburn's going to have a tough year. If anybody makes it out of the West undefeated, I believe it would be a great feat because you've got Mississippi State is a wonderful team. Ole Miss is now hitting on all cylinders. it's just going to be a crazy year to see how that plays out and the scenarios that can happen with that. There's a lot of things playoff-wise that can really shake out. And like you told me just a second ago, talking about Georgia Tech and Arizona maybe making a run. Notre Dame's still in the mix too. I think for all arguments, we can go ahead and count the Big Ten for the most part out. I think Michigan State could possibly still be in the race. Nebraska almost came back and beat them. I think that was a
You got to think of the favorable schedule in the Big Ten too, Travis.
Yeah, I mean, who are you going to put in, though? The Big Ten champ more than likely is not going to be undefeated. All right, we know this. The Big 12 champ probably not going to be undefeated.
Unless
They're
Baylor.
Yeah, unless Baylor, keeps on rolling. The SEC champ's probably not going to be undefeated. So what do you do with an undefeated Arizona coming out of the Pac-12? If they do, I mean, can you keep them out of the playoff? I don't think so. Notre Dame, let's say they knock off Florida State and they continue their roll. Then that gives you only maybe, and let's just say for the sake of argument right now, Georgia Tech wins the ACC. They go undefeated. Florida State's got the loss to Notre Dame. Georgia Tech somehow beats Florida State in the ACC championship game. I think it's going to be crazy. I think it's going to be a mess
at the
end of the season.
For the first era of the playoffs, but I guess to quicken things up here when we got 10 minutes left, we're going to go. Let's talk about the local college games. But first, let's do our top 4 playoff teams. Go ahead and just name off your top 4 playoff teams.
Big shakeup from last week, obviously, with the upsets. But I've got 1 through 4: Auburn, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, and Notre Dame. I'm still not sold on Florida State, and I won't be. If they go up and they beat Notre Dame in 2 weeks, then I'll be sold on them. I'll put them back in there. But until they play somebody and beat somebody, I'm not putting Florida State in there.
But you're going to put 3 Southeastern Conference teams
You were
in
ripping
there?
I'm with you on this. I don't like the SEC, but
they're the best.
Those are 3 out of the 4 best teams right now. But you know what? It'll be different next week because I think Texas A&M will upset Ole Miss, and I think Auburn will beat Mississippi State. I'll go ahead and say that.
It pains me to say this, but I'm going to have to leave an ACC school out on mine. I'm going to go with whoever wins the Southeastern Conference, whoever wins that SEC championship game. I don't even know who to pick right now. It's going to win it, but they're going to get in. I think Notre Dame's going to beat Florida State. I believe they're going to win out. They're going to get in. I'm going to go with Arizona coming out of the Pac-12. I believe they're going to get in. And for my other pick, I'm going to go with Michigan State winning the Big Ten, even though they're going to have a loss.
So
I think they're going to make the playoff.
You're looking towards the end of the season.
Right, yeah.
So I'm looking at mine right now.
I'm picking my 4 teams
with
in the
a couple
playoff.
of yours if we're looking towards the end of the season. But I'd have to disagree on your SEC championship pick because I think there's a scenario that we've talked about that the SEC champion could have as many as 3 losses. If you've got an East team that comes out with 3 losses playing maybe an undefeated West team, and that East team wins the SEC championship, I don't see how you can put them in.
Well, we can turn it around. Georgia got all their wide receivers back. Got Todd Gurley. Anything can happen with them. They've already lost 1 game. They've got Florida coming up. They got Missouri this week. We'll learn a lot about Georgia here the next 2 weeks.
We talked about the West, the top 4 teams in the West playing each other. The top 2 teams in the East play each other.
There are so many people waiting to jump on this playoff committee, though, when they make the picks. How risky are they going to be when it comes to – I mean, why not – I can see them going with the sure thing. If you've got 4 undefeated teams, no matter where they come from, that's probably who they're going to take.
Let's just hope Notre Dame doesn't go undefeated.
Now, they'll be the number 1 team in the country. So now, let's say that does happen. Let's say the SEC does get shut out. That may be the best case scenario because then what happens is all the SEC people get in a big uproar. Maybe in 2 more seasons we have an 18 playoff.
That's what we need. If you take the 5 power conferences and you take all your conference championships, okay, and all those conference championships get a bid, and that gives you 3 at-large teams that you can pick from. I went back 10 years this week, and the last 10 seasons, if you take the 5 conference champions, and believe it or not, some of the conference champions aren't even ranked in the final poll. But that's fine if you're going to do it that way. But if you take the 5 conference champions and then you take the 3 at-large teams, there's little to no argument that you can make with those 3 teams that should be in.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to shake out. It's going to be weird. My top 4 teams starting off number 1, I've got to put Auburn up there. They've played so well I know the Kansas State game was a little iffy, but going on the road to Manhattan, Kansas, and winning that one on a Thursday night there a few weeks ago was big. Second, I'm going to put Baylor. I know a lot of people are talking about Baylor, about what their coach said about he was going to play a weaker schedule because he could. I've got Baylor there. They play TCU this week, and then other than that, I really don't see. They're still one of those teams that can slip up. And then I've got Ole Miss with that big win over Alabama. That really propelled them from 11th place up into the top 5, really talking about maybe a national championship in Oxford. And then I've got Florida State right now as being said because I think Florida State's still relevant. They've got Jameis Winston, even though you know what we all say about Jameis.
Yeah, if they go undefeated, Florida State will be in, but I really think they're going to struggle when it comes against Notre Dame.
I do too.
Right.
And y'all know how I feel about Baylor. I don't like Baylor, and they'll never be in my top 4. I don't care if they do go undefeated. If you're not going to play anybody, you don't deserve to be in.
That's rough. Let's go ahead and talk about some local college games. We'll just talk about that one that happened in Emory, Virginia last week. Travis, you went to that game. I didn't go out because game day was in Oxford, but go ahead.
Yeah, Emory picked up a big ODAC conference win over the Randolph-Macon Yellow Jackets, 38-28. Gets really tough for Emory going forward as they travel to Bridgewater this week, and they follow that up with a trip to Hampton-Sydney. We'll see if this team's for real, but Kurt Newsom seems to have that team playing very well. The difference between this E&H team and the E&H teams we've seen in the past is the ability to make some adjustments. It seems like the last several years, Emory and Henry would come in with a game plan, and they would keep that through the whole game, and win, whether they're winning, losing, whatever. They never strayed away from that. They got a great quarterback down there right now. Things are looking good for Emory. That these next 2 weeks will tell. Tough games at Bridgewater, and then the trip to Hampton-Sydney. Hampton-Sydney sitting right there. They've got a loss. Bridgewater's 4-0. Hampton-Sydney's 3-1, but Hampton-Sydney, again, just on the outside looking in this week's D3 top 25. So,
are you going to any of those away games? You staying this way?
I believe I'll stay this way. It's a good Saturday to be in front of the Tube again this week.
Yeah, I'd say it will be. Yeah, we got 2 big matchups. We're going to go over this weekend here in college football right after this quick commercial break. We'll be right back.
Sports Talk with Travis DeBusk and Dillon Hutton is brought to you by none other than Political Dogs, the hot dog leader of the free world. Dine in or take out of Political Dogs on 215 Town Square Street in Glade Spring, Virginia. The number is 276-429-1165. They're open Monday through Saturday, 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. And check out their website, politicaldogs.com. They're also the site for our show on Tuesdays at 6 o'clock. Make sure you stop by and watch and eat at Political Dogs. You're listening to Sports Talk with Travis DeBusk and Dillon Hutton. They'll be talking Hogo sports and college sports here on the Hoga-Higgy Network. They would like to thank their sponsors, starting off with Appalachian Plastics, Big M Farm Service, Serber & Son, Carter's Pharmacy, Glade Pharmacy, Abingdon Equipment, Lowe's, never stop improving, and last but not least, Political Dogs. If you have any Hoga-Higgy related questions or any college football related questions in general, tweet us at Hogo Game Day. And we'll answer the questions right here or discuss the comments right here live on the show. Sports Talk with Travis DeBusk and Dillon Hutton is brought to you by none other than Political Dogs, the hot dog leader of the free world. Dine in or take out of Political Dogs on 215 Town Square Street in Glade Spring, Virginia. The number is 276-429-1165. 1165. They're open Monday through Saturday, 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. And check out their website, politicaldogs.com. They're also the site for our show on Tuesdays at 6 o'clock. Make sure you stop by and watch and eat at Political Dogs. If you have any Hoga-Higgy related questions or any college football related questions in general, tweet us at Hogo Game Day. And we'll answer the questions right here or discuss the comments right here live on the show. Welcome back to Sports Talk. We're here in the final segment from another successful show here live from Political Dogs in the Glade Springtown Square. It's a busy time here in the town square. We got the debate for mayor going on over in the library, so a busy time for Glade Spring. Let's go ahead and turn to the Saturday slate. At noon, kickoff on CBS. Number 13, Georgia travels to number 23, Missouri, to face off with the Tigers in a pivotal game in the SEC East.
Man, this is tough. I really don't know on this one. I'm almost dead even on this one. I guess if I had to take somebody, it's at Missouri, right? Yeah, I'll go with Georgia.
You did the little league courses. You got Georgia?
I think it's cool just to say it. I'm going to go with Mizzou.
I thought about it.
You're wrong most of the time, so that's pretty good.
He picked your Howie all year, didn't he?
Yeah, he has.
Okay.
I'm interested to see who he picks next week. Georgia with Missouri. Todd Gurley is a difference maker, I think. They don't really have a running back at Missouri that you really hear about. Matty Mock's a good QB. It'll be a close game. Georgia's defense has not played up to their standard yet. Of course, under a new defensive coordinator switching back to that 4-3 set. I've got Georgia close on the road at Missouri.
I think Gurley could be the best player in the nation right now. If I had to give the Heisman away right now, it'd have to be to Gurley.
Did you see the 40-yard or the 50-yard pass he threw against Vandy?
And you said that was the
longest pass this year for Georgia. If Georgia can get Hudson Mason going and throwing a little bit better, he's not very confident right now at the QB position. If they get him going, they can be a contender moving forward. They're sort of mad right now, Georgia fans are, because they were sitting at 13 last week.
Yeah.
And then all these upsets
skipped.
happen. They're still there. They've gotten skipped by everybody. I understand it. The only thing we got really right now, Todd Gurley. So all right. Sorry about that. Only thing Georgia has right now really is Todd Gurley. Let's go ahead and move on to the next segment of the show. Right here, the next game up, noon kickoff on ESPN, Florida State at Syracuse.
I got Florida
in
State
the Carrier
in this
Dome.
one. I think they're looking ahead, too. I think they're preparing for Notre Dame. Syracuse actually switched offensive coordinators this week and lost their quarterback for the season. So I don't think it'll even be close. I think Florida State big.
Yeah, I think Syracuse missed their chance to sneak up and pick off a big team last week in their loss to Louisville. Speaking of Notre Dame, though, Syracuse played Notre Dame pretty tough there for a half in that game up in New York City, but I'm taking Florida State easily.
Yeah, I'm taking Florida State. I think Jameis does enough to get them to win there pretty handily. Noon kickoff. This game really doesn't have a lot on it. Big 12 implications are pretty big. Both of them are 1-1 if they can bounce back. Texas at number 11, Oklahoma. They're coming off that huge upset to TCU. It's going to be on ABC.
I think Oklahoma gets it back on track. I don't think Texas is quite there yet. Oklahoma.
But Texas has showed sparks this year. They held Baylor to 28 points.
Texas has showed sparks. Charlie Strong doing a good job down there. I think he goes ahead and picks up a signature win right here in this Red River Shootout. Oklahoma's reeling a little bit. I'm going to go with Texas.
Yeah, I'm sticking with Bob Stoops. I think a bounce-back win is a perfect timing right here with Texas coming into town. I think Oklahoma, but it's a little bit closer. I think it'll be a pretty good game. CBS 3:30, big game here. Number 2 Auburn, 5-0, 2-0 in the SEC in Starkville at number 3, Mississippi State, who's also 5-0, 2-0 in the SEC. Game day is going to be in Mississippi for 2 weeks straight. And as Lee Corso will either put on that Tiger head or he'll put on the Bulldog. So it just depends. But who do you got in this game?
I was wrong last week on the Mississippi State game. That was my surprise game. Mississippi State blowing out Texas A&M by 17 points. I really thought Texas A&M would win that. But I'm still going with Auburn here. I think Auburn gets the win. I think Auburn's overall the better team.
I'm going to go ahead and bust Dillon's bubble. The Egg Bowl won't be between two undefeated teams. Auburn's going to beat Mississippi State.
I've got Mississippi State winning this game at home in Starkville. It's a huge home boost. They've waited for this moment. Last week was just a little intro to get ready for this game. I feel like Mississippi State right now, defensively, they're playing great. Dak Prescott is a man among boys out there on the field. They're playing very well. I've got Mississippi State in that one. At 3:30 on ESPN2, number 9 TCU at number 5 Baylor.
I think TCU wins this. I'm not sold on Baylor. They haven't played anybody all year. I don't think I'm going to have to worry about my Baylor undefeated comment earlier. I'm going TCU.
Yeah, I'm going with Texas Christian also.
Baylor offense. I've got Baylor. I think last week they were a little out of rhythm. This week at home, I think they get it back underneath them here. Number 12, Oregon at number 18, UCLA, 3:30 on Fox. This game was set to be like the greatest meeting between Pac-12 teams of all time, but both teams were upset last week. Now this game's sort of flying in under the radar. But this game could be a big wipeout game as far as if they have any chance of making it to the playoff, and it wipes them out pretty much of the Pac-12 discussion.
I'm going with Oregon in this one. I'm still not sold on UCLA. Got upset by Utah. Played some tough games with Virginia and Memphis this year. Maybe some teams they should have blown out. I don't think Brett Hundley's playing to his full potential this year. And since they graduated some of those guys on defense, Anthony Barr and some of the other ones, the defense really hasn't looked great this year. I'm going with Oregon.
Yeah, I'm with Cory. I don't think Oregon's going to drop 2 in a row, and UCLA's not the team we thought they were a couple weeks ago, so give it to the Ducks.
Yeah, I've got the Ducks too. That's finally something we all agree on, so it'll be an interesting weekend. I've got Oregon again. I don't think UCLA will be able to slow them down. They've got some good playmakers. Miles Jack, he's a two-way player for UCLA. He played a lot last year and got his name out there. 6 o'clock on ESPN, number 7 Alabama travels to Arkansas to face off with the Razorbacks. This game could be pretty interesting. Their ground and pound style of play with Arkansas, if they can keep it clean, they can get it in the fourth quarter with Bama. Anything can happen. They played Texas A&M fairly close, where they played them into overtime. So Arkansas and Alabama.
I think this game is very, very, very close, but I don't think Alabama loses 2 in a row. I'm going to go with Bama.
Yeah, I think Arkansas can make a game out of it, but it would be out of character for Alabama to turn around. I mean, they did play very well against Ole Miss, just couldn't get it done in the end. That's one thing we didn't hit on. Alabama had an opportunity to score at the end of that game. They threw the interception in the end zone. A score and an extra point would have gave Alabama the win. But I think Alabama handles Arkansas pretty easily.
Yeah, I've got Alabama over Arkansas. It'll be a fun. Arkansas had a bye to prepare for Alabama, so that might be a little bit of a difference there. Brett Bielema, that'd be a good chance for Arkansas maybe to slip up on the Tide. So that'll be fun. Alabama, of course, has got they've got Texas A&M the week after this. So
that'd be tough, and that would be Arkansas's first win if they could get it this weekend. First win in the SEC this year.
Yeah, that would be huge for them. And the last game here for our pick'em, number 3 Ole Miss 5-0 and 2-0 against Texas A&M, number 14 5-1, 2-1 in the SEC. 9 o'clock kickoff on ESPN. You've already said.
I'm going with Texas A&M. I heard the interview with Hugh Freeze, and I don't think he's extremely confident on his team in a hostile environment. And they're going to Texas A&M, and that's one of the toughest places to play in college football. I'm going with A&M. They won't lose 2 in a row.
Too much hype for Ole Miss and too much Kenny Hill. We're going with Texas Agriculture and Mechanical College. Texas A&M.
Nope. Ole Miss.
Well, we had to know you were
defense. Kim Deechey, all those guys, the 2 Kim Deecheys. This Ole Miss defense is for real. They're going to shut down Kenny Hill. They held Alabama in the first half. They only gave up 14 points to Alabama's offense. They've played well all year. They're number 2 in the nation in defense. They're only giving up 10 points per game. So they've played well up to this point. Ole Miss's defense, they're for real.
Spoken like a true politician right here at the Political Dog.
They're number 2, and what's up with that? What's up with that? They're number 2.
Hey, Alabama is not
defense.
the team that we thought they were. They're not as good as recent years.
Is that what we're going to say now just because Ole Miss beat them? They're still a good football team.
I think
They've
I'm
got
going to put
TJ
Alabama ahead of Ole Miss in my power rankings.
We'll see how mad you get.
That's all right. You boys, I don't even know what to say. Take us out of here, Trev.
All right, we want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. Thanks to the staff here at Political Dog. If you haven't been here yet, be sure you visit Political Dog Town Square, Glade Spring. Glade Spring, Virginia, beautiful place. They're also our Friday night sponsor of the Political Dog Hot Dog Play of the Drive, so be sure you tune in on Friday night to listen to that. Just a reminder, this Friday night we will be at Northwood for the George Wythe Rocky Maroons against the Northwood Mighty Panthers. Going to be an exciting game Friday night. Shout out to the rest of our sponsors, Abingdon Equipment, Lowe's Home Improvement Warehouse, Big M Farm Supplies, Serber & Son. We also got Carter's Pharmacy over in Saltville and the Glade Spring Pharmacy. So thanks to all those folks for helping us out.
That was impressive. That was impressive, you naming off those sponsors like that.
Just a reminder, join us here again next Tuesday night, 6 o'clock at Political Dog for Sports Talk Live. For Dillon, Cory, this is Travis. We want to give our special thanks out to Andy over there running the computer. We'll see you guys Friday night from Northwood.